Yesterday, I did something I've needed to do since retiring. I sat down and took a real honest look at where our money is going. Not guesses, not rough estimates. I took 3 months of actual spending, real spending, and looked at them line by line. That raw reality of this is how we spend our money. Because here's the truth. Once you retire, your income is usually pretty fixed, but your expenses are where we have a little bit more control. And with studies showing that nearly 1 in 5 retirees struggle financially in retirement, I needed to answer a question for myself. Are we living in a sustainable way for the long haul? As they say, you can't manage what you can't measure, and I needed to get some real measurements. So today I'm sharing my monthly retirement expenses, category by category, along with what those numbers mean in our life, because numbers alone don't give you the full context. My hope is that by adding some of that real life context, you'll be able to translate these numbers into your lifestyle and retirement plans. And at the end, we'll play a little expense limbo. How low could we go if we needed to pull back and reduce some of those expenses? And having that more conservative baseline does create some breathing room for when life happens. And for context, we live in South Texas in a modest home. We don't drive new cars. By my standards, we live very comfortably. We want for very little. But honestly, we want very little as well. We're really more focused on experience and relationship and that sort of quality of life. We do splurge on a few things, and then we're more conservative on other areas, other categories in this budget. And I'll kind of point those out as we go through this. And I intentionally left out 2 categories. One is charitable giving and tithing, and healthcare expenses. Those 2 categories can vary wildly from person to person, and I didn't want to skew those numbers based on our personal choices in those areas or expenses. All right, let's get into those numbers. So first, I'm going to look at the fixed categories, those expenses that really don't change. And then we'll wrap up with the wiggle categories, those categories where we do have some flexibility. So the first one I've got listed is our federal income tax. And in Texas, we don't pay a state income tax. So our federal income tax month to month is $125. And that is a little bit low because we do have some deductions that a lot of people don't have. We have a couple rental properties that help us reduce that net income earned. So after the federal income tax, let's look at our housing costs. And housing usually includes principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. And we do carry a mortgage on this home. When we looked at possibly paying it off with some of our savings, it just didn't make financial sense for us. We have one of those really nice 3.8% mortgage rates, and our money really is working much harder for us in our investment account. And we could choose to pay it off at some point if we wanted to, or it would be paid off in 20 years. And so our home is a modest 1,440 square foot, 3-bed, 2-bath, 2-car garage on a, city lot in a neighborhood. It was built in 1980. And when we purchased the home, we gave it a good little facelift. So it's not that home stuck in the 1980s. So next is real estate taxes, and that is kind of a deal here in Texas. Texas doesn't have the state income tax, but we do have notoriously high real estate taxes. And real estate taxes on this home would be $375 a month. But as seniors, we do get a couple really significant discounts. The first one is our homeowners exemption, and I think that's about a 10% discount. But when my husband turned 65, we got this senior discount, which dropped that real estate tax from $375 to $110 a month. That was significant for us. And then next we'll have our insurance. So our typical insurance, just homeowners insurance, and this is one that we've chosen to carry a higher deductible on. We're comfortable with that right now. And so we only pay about $40 a month for our regular homeowners insurance. However, in South Texas, when you have a mortgage on your home, you're required to carry Windstorm insurance. And that one is pretty high. Right now, that's $125 a month. And we would consider dropping that when we pay off this home. And next is car insurance. And so my car is a Lexus RX 350, my favorite car. I think this is the third one we've purchased. And then my husband has a Toyota Tundra truck. And both of those are a little bit older models. And interestingly, though his car or his truck is older than mine, the insurance on his truck is higher than my nice little Lexus RX 350. Maybe it's Texas. Trucks and Texas. And so that liability only for those two vehicles is $110 a month. And in transportation, we have our gas, and that has gone up a little bit here, but we average about $200 a month on gas. Next, let's look at kind of this utilities category. So we don't have gas in this home. So our electric averaged over the last 3 months, and that would be February, March, and April. And that is significant for electric, because if you're familiar with South Texas, we can get hot. We're hot a lot. But that average for those 3 months was $175. Now that will probably go up once we hit June, July, August, maybe even September, but then it drops below that in some of those cooler fall months. And that's to keep a 1,440 square foot house comfortable. I like a 79-degree temperature in the daytime and 77 to sleep in. The 2 spare bedrooms, we usually keep the vents closed in those rooms when they're not in use. And upgrading our windows would really help on those electric costs, and that's something that we're considering. Water and garbage, that costs us $125 a month. And then our internet and our 2 cell phones, we have that bundled together in a senior package with AT&T, and so that's $99 with taxes and fees. That comes up to $110, and that's for good internet connection. We do have that fiber optic here, and then again those 2 cell phone plans. We don't have any streaming subscriptions or any of those sorts of things. We ended up dropping our Amazon Prime a while ago. We just didn't use all the bells and whistles that come with that, and we're fine waiting a few days for our packages to arrive. And we usually avoid the shipping costs by just hitting a certain number. I think it's, if you order $50, shipping is free. Maybe that's $35. One of those two. So next, we're going to get into those wiggle categories, the categories where there is some flexibility in how much we spend. So we're going to start with food. And the food category doesn't just include food. It includes things like paper towels and paper products and cleaning supplies and shampoo, just those household items that you can buy at a grocery store. And we do value putting good food in our body. And quality ingredients do cost more. Organic, pasture-raised, grain-fed, and even sourcing some foods from other countries. For example, Kerrygold butter and cheese. Those cows in Ireland produce some really good butter and cheese. Or Parmesan cheese from Italy. It's 2 to 3 times more expensive than domestic brands, but I can really taste the difference. And I've balanced some of these more expensive foods with our local fruit and veg market. I discovered this store called the Fruit King, and they carry a variety of fruit and vegetables, not always as perfect and pretty as your grocery store. And it does vary each time I go in. Kind of reminds me of a little tienda, little store in Mexico or Central America. But it has been fun to see what they have and what looks good each time I go. Buying a bag full of poblano peppers for $2. And then I grill those and chop them up and put them in the freezer. That makes our food budget much happier. And serving poblano pasta makes my husband very happy. So there are some creative ways to still eat well, but not blow that food budget. But our food budget, our average, is $950 a month. So our next category is vitamins and supplements. And they say health is the new wealth in retirement. And we don't mind investing in quality vitamins and supplements. We currently don't take any prescription medication, so maybe this helps offset some of that. And there are a few, at least in my mind, have-to vitamins and supplements, and some that we could probably pull back on or reduce, especially as we lean more into this food is medicine approach with clean, healthy eating. So vitamins and supplements, that comes in at $300 a month. So next are entertainment. And entertainment can include a lot of things, activities, dining out, sports equipment. And for us, we don't dine out that much. Being creative in the kitchen, that's sort of a hobby for me. So our entertainment budget really goes mainly to golf, but other types of activities like that. And that is set at $300 a month. And then finally, our miscellaneous category. We just kind of throw everything else in there. And we probably do need to look at this a little closer each month. It's just been kind of a junk drawer for everything else. But it includes things like haircuts and clothing and, my spring garden refresh this year of new pots and plants and edging and fertilizer. So let's look at this total. This is really what all this work on my spreadsheet was about. What did we spend? Where did it go? But what was the bottom line? So our total expenses for those 3 months, February, March, and April, averaged to a monthly total of just under $4,000, $3,995. And again, that did not include any healthcare expenses or charitable giving and tithing. So that's what our monthly average expenses look like here in South Texas, with all of that definition of carrying a mortgage and how we choose to spend our money in each of those categories. So let's look at this limbo version. How low could we go? How low could we get this monthly budget? And so the first one would be paying off our mortgage. We could save $850 a month in that mortgage payment, which is principal and interest. And then with that, we would have the option of dropping that Windstorm insurance, which is another $125. And so let's look at some of those wiggle categories that we could reduce in this limbo version of a budget. So the first one would be the gas. We could drop that to probably $100, maybe $150 a month. The food total, we could very realistically pull that down to $750 a month. We might not have our ribeye steak multiple times a month, but we would still be eating very well. And vitamins, like I said, we probably could pull back on those some. So I have that down as $100 a month in this limbo version. Entertainment, we could take it to $100. And then this miscellaneous category from $500 down to $200 a month. And again, I do understand this is a pullback on some of those things, but it's good to know what we could live on if we needed to. And so that limbo budget, and again, without your giving and tithes and healthcare expenses, is $2,195. That's a difference of $1,800. That's $1,800 wiggle if we had to do that from really just spending what we want right now. We really don't think about it too much, to maybe being more intentional and careful about how we spend our money. And the big one, paying off the mortgage. And now that I did that big look, I'll be tracking this more carefully month to month to just see where our money is going and keep an eye on that. And one of the things that makes this really easy for me to do that I thought I would share in here is how we manage our purchases. So we put everything that we possibly can on a credit card. We have a Capital One card that has no annual fee, and we do pay that off every month. And last year, the rewards on that card added up to almost $900 in travel expenses, which I'm sure we will be using. And that's just for using this card for purchases that we'll already make. But the simplicity and the peace of mind, really that's what this was about. I really only need to check our checking balance a couple times a month. When our mortgage payment goes out, when we're expecting a deposit, and then this one payment for our credit card. That's it. Not ever wondering if we would ever overdraw our account. I'll just manage it before that one big payment comes out rather than multiple times a month. Clean, easy, simple, peace of mind, and a nice little travel bonus that we get. So there you have it. What retirement costs here in South Texas, from real numbers for real months and by real people. And then what it would look like on that limbo plan, that how low could we go if we needed that kind of wiggle room in the future. And so this afternoon with my head in a spreadsheet really was very helpful. Wasn't too far off from what fuzzy numbers I had in my head. I think this is about what we're spending. But there were some eye-opening revelations about where that money was going. And I think we may be able to manage some things a little bit better going forward. You know, I hadn't done this granular look that I needed to do. And honestly, I should have done it a lot sooner. Now I'm a lot more comfortable with where our money is going each month, and then have that limbo number really bring some clarity to what we could do if we needed to. That peace of mind, that alone made it worth doing. If you found this helpful, hit that like button. It really does help this channel. And if living in South Texas is on your radar as a possible retirement destination, drop something in the comments. I'd be happy to answer any questions I can about living here in South Texas. So until next time, here's to living our fully alive retirement lives in a manageable and sustainable way.